Hail, fellow GMs, and welcome to another episode of Table Talk, R&D for Greater RP. Today, we're going to talk about one of the topics that's particularly passionate to me, theater of the mind versus minis. Which one makes more sense, one or the other? Does one make sense all the time? Does one make sense never? I don't know. Let's talk about it. So, my guest today is Desiree, a fellow GM. How do you feel about theater of the mind?
I feel that theater of the mind is something that you need to give to your players to create a complete immersion situation for them to kind of go in and completely mess up for you.
And they will, too.
They will try.
Oh, that's funny.
You have to think about the beginning of D&D, and when it first came out, there was nothing for us. There was no minis, no maps. The entirety of it was theater of the mind, and we were children at the time. We probably read through The Hobbit, and that was about it. That was our intro, our toe-wetting experience into fantasy and worlds that can exist.
Oh, yeah. The first game of D&D I ever played was a heavily modified version of First Edition. Much closer to what is now known as Original Edition, like a very Moldvay-esque game. Character death was easy, and character experience was hard to come by. And there were no minis, and if you wanted the map, you drew it yourself. And going into... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Do you remember those old dungeon crawl days where, you would just get a piece of graph paper as a player, and you would have to draw out what was being described to you?
Oh, yeah. My DM had two requirements. Somebody was going to be the caller, and I don't mean goes around your neck, I mean the shot caller, right? He basically spoke for the group. He would quickly take the assessment from the group of what they wanted to do, and then give it to the GM, and for the most part, the GM only spoke directly to him when it came to decision-making time. And you had another player who was going to draw the map, and if he didn't draw, whether he wanted to really wasn't really up to him. If he didn't draw it, y'all didn't have one. There you go.
Yes, exactly. And that was a position of power. That was the best seat at the table.
Oh yeah, and heaven forbid if that guy was a rogue, because he would screw you over.
But your fault as a DM if they put a wall in between you and what it is that you want them to face, or I should say them and what it is they want you to face, because you're the one that didn't describe it properly.
Right. Oh yeah. So let me play devil's advocate here for a second. A lot of the single biggest complaint I probably get when I'm theater of the mind and my players are minis and 3D terrain and blah blah blah, is how do you put weight into the speed stat in whatever game you're playing? Movement, speed, call it what you want. How do you make the stat matter in a theater of the mind game?
Oh, you don't. That's just the answer of it. You drop that. It pretty much removes distance and range from combat itself. It gives you this is a close combat or this is a ranged combat situation, but that's really all that you're giving them. So especially with area effects, you say something like, "Oh, you hit most of them, you hit all of them." I feel
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I feel like that allows for a more genuine combat experience because your character doesn't have the football playbook battlefield view that you have when you have your grid and your minis. Your character doesn't know if that guy's 10 feet away or not. The character just knows that guy's coming to kill you. And
even if you have I've had this argument with a fellow GM who's all for minis. He's like, well, I don't know. If a fighter is level, beyond level 5, right? If he's got some experience, he can probably tell the difference just by looking between 10 and 40 and 80 feet. I go, yeah, probably. But the difference between 10 and 15...
where he is and bury him.
Right. The difference between 10 and 15 feet? How about now? And he didn't like that.
I don't know. I just feel like things like that, removing those aspects and giving a more vague, more generalized description of it allows for you as a player and your character to have the same kind of how many more can there be situation, because you're not going to be completely aware of it. One combat encounter is 6 seconds. That's it. That's all you get. And I feel like it unifies the party, it unifies the table, and it creates those memories, those those moments of the game that not only do you take with you as a person into the week ahead and waiting for next session, but it's also the things that will come up during your next session or your last session recap. It forces the game into your brain. It creates the experience.
I think you're right. I think there's a much more immersive experience when you have to, because if you don't have minis and like little trees and pillars and doors and crap on the table, you have to explain where all the torches are and what kind of light they're giving off, and if this room smells like goblin urine or not, and if there's right. And I think you paint a more cohesive atmospheric picture that way. Last time I explained a room to my players before they essentially overruled me. They were sick and they all wanted minis, and I was like, all right, fine, we'll do it your way. But I still think you're going to get less out of me this way, because it allows us all to be lazy, including me.
Exactly.
We were doing an old fashioned just for the afternoon. We were doing a one shot of Tunnels and Trolls, I think.
Okay.
And I explained that this room they came into after they were going down the holes to hunt goblins, and this room they came into was empty except for the damp spot in the corner, and given the smell, was a bathroom. That's it. That's all I said. And they went, oh, gross. And I watched them picture that smell in their brains.
Perfect.
Because that's pretty much all you need to know. That and where the next door is. So you can get out of here.
I don't know. I played in an online 4.0 game a little while ago, and I was completely broken with how little work went into the prep. It was pretty much the DM at the time would pull a generated map off of the internet and just be like, okay, this is what you see, what do you want to do? And it's like, okay, what is happening? Can I walk over this green patch on the map? Like, is this mountains? Is this quicksand? What is happening right now?
Is it a magic energy barrier made out of living moss? Right, what is it?
Or you'll find the ones that will take just a random picture and be like, okay, so these trees are actually just mountains, so good luck.
Oh, God.
And that's actually one of my fears, especially with like the Witcher RPG that came out, or really just anyone that is from pop culture, I guess I should say. I know that back in the 80s there was a Legend of Zelda one that came out. There was even like a Sailor Moon one.
Oh, yeah, I've played the Sailor Moon one. It's terrible.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. I've played a lot of kind of off-brand or pop culture generated. Like there's a Pirates of Darkwater RPG that I own that is quite good. It's surprisingly good. The mechanics are kind of shaky, but the explanation of the characters and the map and everything, it's weird. It's almost a better companion to the cartoon than it is an RPG.
And that was the point.
Yeah, that was totally the point.
That was the 80s, and everybody was playing Satan's games.
Right, everybody needed an RPG. Gomer Pyle, and everybody needed a comic book. Gomer Pyle has comic books.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Like it's absolutely ridiculous.
But that's really my fear, is that all of the players have already been to these places. So you as a DM, you really kind of have to work to make them picture it, because what they're seeing is the 16-bit pixelation that we all grew up with, and it's like, no, I need you to see the place that I wrote that's in this world, not just the world itself.
And I get a lot of players like this. They're like, well, what's the point of Theater of the Mind? Because you're going to explain the same dungeon over and over and over again. I went, am I? Because you guys love Skyrim, and all those caves are the same.
Right?
And they were like, well, no, they're not. I went, why not? And they went, because this one has giant swinging blade traps, and that one has flame jets, and that one has a dragon in a weird spot, which is to say underground. And I went, okay, there you go. There's how come they're different. You just made my point for me. I don't, ugh.
No, my point is an argument.
Say again?
But no, that point is the argument. You can't use it for yourself.
You can't, look, Theater of the Mind is the way to go. And they're all like, well, this bow is better because it shoots 35 feet, and that one shoots 30 feet. And I'm in the Theater of the Mind game. I'm going, that wouldn't matter. Just take the bow, okay?
It's like whether or not it shoots 30 or 35 feet, if you miss the roll, you still miss the guy.
Right. Who gives a crap if it shoots an extra 5 feet? Right. Yeah. So.
Oh gosh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I don't know. I just feel like online theater of the mind has really evolved poorly. I don't like the fact that hardly any of the senses are being used, and that you don't get to play your character. You get to play you with these things that you've chosen to go into this battle with. So your character doesn't develop a personality, and that kind of is horrible, because you don't get to make the character that you originally wanted when you first were handed the blank sheet.
This is a really good point.
Yeah, you spend too much time chasing the DM around, asking for clarification on things, that you lose what it is. And another door that I'm always afraid of with things like that is that it leaves things open for metagaming.
You mean with a map pre-generated? What, specifically?
Yeah, pretty much. Because a lot of people don't take the time to describe what's going on this pre-generated map. I had an experience very early on in my D&D career, and it really kind of turned me off for it for a little while. But we were playing a 3-0 game. I was playing a thief, and we went into Dungeon C, I'll call it. And
loving it so far.
So we go into this room, and there's like 7 doors in it, and that was really the description that we got. Is you walk into this big vast room, there's candles on the wall, there's 7 doors to choose from. And me playing a thief, I asked the DM how the doors open. Do they swing out into the next room or in toward me?
And as from a thief's point of view, that absolutely matters.
Yes.
And stuff like how are they secured to the walls? Is it hinges? Do I push them? Is there a doorknob? Is it locked?
Well, that's exactly what wound up happening, because we found out that all of the locks in that room were essentially too high for me to get to. Mm-hmm. So I told him that if that's the case, then I would like to take 10 and take the pins out of the hinges for the doors and get in the doors that way. Mm-hmm. I probably played that session for the next 4 months, and then I finally could not deal with it anymore, and I left. But the thing that always stuck in my mind was that because I asked that question, and because things didn't go the way that DM wanted them to go, no door ever swung towards me again.
Huh. That's
not how houses are built. That's not how the real world works.
The one that I love is making, for doors specifically, is you put, and this really works better when you have a paranoid group, or at least a paranoid rogue in your group, and you end up submitting them to can be an underground cavern, a dungeon, a palace, whatever, a place where there's lots of doors that are all reasonably expected to be locked. And the party ends up in there, and the vast majority of them were locked and have been, and signs are there to the educated rogue that they have already been picked. That one's fun, because your rogue's brain goes nuts. They're like, "What do you mean it was rigged open? You heard me."
It's like, now you have to think a minute,
right? Like, did somebody get here first? Did the doors just suck? Did the king get drunk one night and bash his knuckles off the doors till they opened? Who knows? I do, but the rest of you don't.
I guess, like, in retrospect, I just feel bad about it, because way back in the day, it was literally just the DM against us, the players. It was, it was that war. He was out to get you, and that was it. And the only thing that you could do was survive.
Interesting. I've never looked at it like that. I definitely looked at it as, I agree that in the past we didn't have minis. If you had a map, you drew it yourself.
Yeah.
But I never really looked at it as a DM versus the player.
Well, that's what I don't know if maybe things weren't written properly, or if that was just the fun of it, was, we're going to all go to Joe's house and die tonight. It's going to be great.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I have no problems killing a player, but I don't think I've ever, unless we agreed to that ahead of time, for me to be unfair on purpose in a big, obvious kind of way, I don't think I ever deliberately try to kill the party. That said, I don't believe in balance either. I'll throw things on the table. Go ahead.
luckily, those days are over now because I mean, especially with five, realms have been completely and utterly created for us. Like these are our tools. This is what we have. But if you're not utilizing it and you're not putting your own, I guess, like flair into it, then it's not even worth keeping the book at the table and reading the descriptions from it.
Right. A friend of mine who's a GM who ended up asking me, he's like, I have a problem with descriptive text because I read them from the book or whatever, and I come across the little, pre-boxed text to describe a space. He's like, yeah. I read them off, and my players not often go to sleep on me. I went, did you rewrite them? And he went, no. I said, do that. You can use the same description if you want. Just change the sentence structure around a little bit so it sounds more like something you would say. And that way you're not reading... Right, you're not reading it off of a cue card. You'll be amazed how much better you sound if you actually, use your voice.
Yes. Oh, gosh, that is another thing, too, that I've noticed that a lot of people don't fall into anymore. NPCs don't have any sort of character to them anymore. They don't even have voices anymore.
Yeah, that is really depressing. I just did roleplay of an NPC 2 games ago who was a mute, and the players got to play charades with him. He's the shopkeeper, so we did this complicated version of point and pay, but it turned out to be point and aggression because one of my players he's not a murder hobo, but he's 4 shades away from it. Like he always goes into everything sword in hand. Whether or not he actually
X-Factor?
Right. Whether or not he actually draws any blood with it, he's pretty good about. But he's always first and asks questions second. So was said NPC. And it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I am a really talkative individual. I have a podcast because I like to talk. It was really hard to shut the hell up for 15 minutes. So we're about out of time on the 15 minutes, but I would love to talk to you again sometime.
Yeah, that would be great.
Sounds good. Have a great day, Des.
Have a good one. Bye,
too.
Jay.
Bye. And there you have it. Theater of the mind or minis. Pro on one side, con on the other, a little bit of both. I don't know. It's your game. Later days.